What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to a little bit of a springtime music catch-up. A lot's been going down in country music. We had the ACM Awards, where Chris Stapleton won Entertainer of the Year. Zach Bryan and Hailey Whitters were the New Artist winners, which, you know, those were my top two albums of last year, so go me. And I'd really say it was a breakout night for Lainey Wilson. Then we've got Morgan Wallen continuing to dominate the charts. He's now like 3 months straight been the #1 album across all genres. And then we also had Morgan Wallen canceling 6 weeks of his tour to go on a full vocal rest. So that's the update on that story. But today we're not talking about any of that. We are just talking about new albums that are out in country music, kind of stuff that's dropped in the last couple months. Some of the bigger ones. Bailey Zimmerman is in this mix, Meg Moroney, Kip Moore, a bunch of others. I'm just going to talk about what I've listened to, and I'm going to warn you in advance, it's not everything. You know, I'm becoming increasingly release date agnostic, and I'd actually love to hear if this is you too, but there's so many albums that come out all the time. There's no possible way to keep up with all of them, and so it's just kind of like they arrive. That's great that they do, but I feel less and less and less pressure to get to them right away. And I don't even think I'm saying that as a music critic. I'm saying that as a music fan. It just feels like, in general, albums sort of arrive, but it's kind of on the artist to make the moment happen. And that often happens way after the release date instead of the big ramp up to the release. Is that something y'all vibe with? But whatever, I should probably just get to reviewing these albums, although I'm seeing myself in the viewfinder, and I feel like I look sort of mangy. I've got neck beard going on. But the good news is that the sponsor of today's video is Manscaped, and specifically a new product of theirs. They're disrupting the beard market. We've got the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, which has everything you need in it to either start growing a beard or kind of maintain what you already have. So let's go get pretty. Now, when I'm cleaning up my beard, the first thing I do is actually trim. So I'm going to take the Beard Hedger here. You can see it has this cool click wheel that has 20 different guard lengths, so you can go super short or keep some length. First thing is to just kind of fade in the sideburn and make sure that you have a nice short fade. The further down my face I go, the more length I kind of give, so there's a nice gradient. You can also fully take the guard off and just line up your cheek line and then your neckline. Here's my tip when you are doing a neckline. It's a little weird, but maybe just imagine someone is like choking you against the wall. Right where that hand kind of naturally sits in the groove of where your neck changes direction into the bottom of your jaw, that's where you want your neckline. For my mustache, I'm going to use the scissors that come in the Beard Hedger Pro Kit and just trim some of these little flyaway hairs. And then they've got beard conditioner and beard oil. I'm personally going to use the beard balm to add a little bit of hold, a little bit of shine, and some great smell. So there we have it, a nice freshly trimmed beard. I feel camera ready now. So if you want to get the Beard Hedger Pro Kit or anything from manscaped.com, you can use my promo code GradySmith for 20% off plus free shipping. That's 20% off plus free international shipping with my promo code GradySmith. There's a link in the description and you can head there, and thanks to them for sponsoring the video. Okay, first up, let's talk about Kip Moore's album, Damn Love. It's the best and worst friend, keeps you hanging on to the end. On this album, a freshly shorn Kip Moore, he has ditched the ponytail he's been rocking for a few years, is going for the 80s. It's definitely meant to evoke Bruce Springsteen. On the whole, I think it captures a pretty cohesive vibe, if not maybe like a year or two late. It kind of feels like the 80s trend sort of peaked with like John Mayer on Sob Rock, and now people haven't been doing it, but nonetheless, that's definitely a sound he has on this album, especially on the title track, as well as standouts like Silver and Gold, which, for whatever reason, Silver and Gold is my big standout. 'Cause all the silver and gold add up to nothing. Now, on the whole, I think the songwriting on this album is pretty broad. Stuff like Kinda Bar feels like it's there because Kip's trying to get another radio hit, but it doesn't feel necessarily that specific to him. And like a lot of the albums I'm going to talk about in this video, it has a tendency just to run together in my mind. Like, I have listened to it a couple times, and it's an enjoyable listen. And then when I go back and think about it, there's just a few songs that really, really stand out to me. Now, one of those songs, like I mentioned, is Silver and Gold. Another is a song called The Guitar Slinger, about who Kip kind of views himself as in the landscape of life. He's the guy with the guitar. Asher McBryde duet is really good, but the kind of final closer, Mickey's Bar, feels very much like a Nashville album's closer. Like, this is the sentimental song that you're supposed to know is the sentimental song. To me, a different one stands out as the big sentimental song, but also the biggest potential hit, and that's called Sometimes She Stays. Yeah, sometimes she stays. Now, I knew I'd heard this song before, and one of the songwriters, Kenton Bryant, had in fact released it years ago, but Kip's version is excellent. I love all these little lines in here about how sometimes this girl goes, but sometimes she stays, and sometimes there's a toothbrush at your place.
Turns into one more toothbrush at your place.
What a beautiful use of toothbrush. That's a good word alert. Toothbrush. That, Silver and Gold, and Guitar Slinger, those are my top 3 on the album. I also liked Damn Love and Neon Blue. But on the whole, the album just kind of feels like, to me. Almost the way I felt about Luke Combs' Growing Up. Then we got Parker McCollum's new album, Never Enough.
I went and bought the biggest bottle they got 'cause you're gone.
People hate this album cover, and I don't think it's so bad. I mean, I don't have any kind of special visual taste when it comes to album covers, but I kind of liked the Gold Chain Cowboy album cover too, and everyone hated that, so, you know, I don't think it's so bad, but I'm just acknowledging, like, I know, y'all hate it. And really, I feel like that's probably the only divisive thing about Parker McCollum's new album, because it's also just sort of like solid and good and there. It's kind of unimpeachable in terms of its sound. It's pretty country, it's pretty appealing. Parker's vocal sounds a little bit more developed than it has in the past. It's not just that kind of like whine that he has. I don't even mean that negatively, but there is a whiny quality to his voice. And it's full of fine songs. And as y'all know, Handle on You was literally my #1 favorite hit country song of last year in my year-end videos. But it's almost less than the sum of its parts, this album. It just feels very samey song to song. A little bit downbeat, fresh contemporary country, but I don't know, it's missing some bite, it's missing some zingers, it's missing just some variety to shake up this album. And so again, I have this strange feeling of liking every song, but not loving the album. But I'll stop being negative, because there's a lot that I do really like on this album. I think some of the leading tracks are amazing, like Handle on You, great song. Tails I Lose, an excellent song.
It's heads you win, tails I lose.
Probably the prettiest vocal and just song in general on this album. The melody is gorgeous, kind of reminds me of Rest of My Life. And I definitely don't think Parker McCollum gravitates toward upbeat songs at all, but some of the faster ones here, like Speed and Hurricane, to me those ones really work here, and definitely the guitar lick on Wheel stands out to me. But as a sad boy, and just as someone that hears what Parker's really good at, some of the sadder songs here are great, like Too Tight This Time.
This place seems so familiar,
as well as Have Your Heart Again.
'Cause I kiss you like the summer rain.
Those songs are really pretty. Someone DM'd me and compared the falsetto notes in those to Why Georgia by John Mayer. It's our second John Mayer reference of the video, but I thought that was an apt comparison. If there's 3 standouts I would recommend checking out from the album, it's gonna be Tails I Lose, Have Your Heart Again, and then probably Handle on You. And I liked Stoned. I liked Lessons from an Old Man too. There's really good steel on this album. It's very tasteful. I really like all the songs in the album, but I don't see myself going back to it. Do you guys understand this phenomenon? If there's a dud on it, it might be I Ain't Going Nowhere, which I know they kind of pushed as the single, and I get why in the context of the album. It definitely stands out, but there's something about the syncopation of the melody still doesn't really work for me. Then let's talk about Megan Moroney's Lucky.
I met somebody, and he's got blue eyes.
This is an excellent debut, and I think going to be one of the big kind of defining albums of this year. And I definitely think we are seeing the launch of a superstar in Megan Moroney. It's country, it's funny, it's got great melodies, she's got such a unique raspy tone. It's very dynamic. We get sad moments, we get silly moments, we get sassy moments, we get fun dancing moments. And I think Megan just has a genuine charisma that comes through in her music. I love that she's not afraid to be a little bit sly and a little bit funny. I think humor is a big part of telling great stories. So y'all know Tennessee Orange. It's an excellent song. We've talked about I'm Not Pretty,
But hey, whatever else, keep on telling yourself I'm not pretty.
which is a hilarious tell-off of a girl that's stalking her on Instagram. But Lucky, the title track, has this awesome, almost Brooks and Dunnish 90s groove.
But come over and overthink it. Tonight you're lucky I'm drinking.
Girl in the Mirror has this somber, reflective tone to it.
I'm the girl in the mirror, that's why.
But literally all those had come out before the release, and so of the new tracks that are here, there's a few that I really love. One of them is called Why Johnny, which is a gorgeous ballad. Another one is called Sleep on My Side, which is about how she sleeps on her side. That just took me 10 tries to say that correctly. But he sleeps with everyone.
You sleep with everyone.
And he's like a big man whore. And it's very funny. It reminds me so much of Step Off by Casey Musgraves on her first album. In a lot of ways, this reminds me of Casey Musgraves' first album. And then there is the runaway standout among the audience, which is a song called Trader Joe.
She's a traitor, Trader Joe.
And no, it is not about the grocery store, although weirdly that is where I listened to this song for the first time, at a Trader Joe's. This is about a traitor of a girl, and she is warning her friend Joe, like, don't be with her. She's a traitor, Joe. Now, I do gotta criticize one of the songs that I do not love on here, called God Plays a Gibson, which is sort of imagining heaven and how it's gonna have dirt roads, and God probably drives a Chevy and plays a Gibson. And I get that it is supposed to be sort of making this bridge of like this holy God that still cares about country folks, but I find it very cheesy. And I have higher expectations for heaven, okay? I want streets of gold. I'm not waiting to get to heaven and going on the dirt roads. I want glowing robes in the temple. I want golden streets. I want a new body, all that stuff. I mean, that's what heaven's supposed to be, right? I don't want freaking Silverados and dirt roads. No. But honestly, that's just a minor shady nitpick to an otherwise great debut album. I think it makes quite a statement. I mean, Megan I could have seen going with way more production throughout this album, but it's a lot more tame and stripped back than I would have thought, which sounds cool to me, especially given that she has kind of an over-the-top Barbie aesthetic visually. And so I like that a lot of this album sounds a lot more raw. Another one I checked out is Jake Worthington's self-titled album.
Here come the headlights of the dry blue lights looking for me.
So this is probably the most straightforwardly country album I've heard this year, and probably will hear this year. I mean, it is like you have been dropped into a honky-tonk in the middle of nowhere, Texas, with thick steel and kind of super twangy guitars, and this sort of snarling southern vocal from Jake Worthington, and old waltzes and creaky floors and occasional fiddle, and it's just so country. Like, give me a cowboy hat. Well, actually, wait one second. Like, I was just in Fort Worth, and this album makes me feel like I need to have my cowboy hat on. Jake Worthington puts you in that saloon vibe, and there's songs like Single at the Same Time and She Ain't You that are just such a good time to listen to, or a sad time to listen to, but so country.
I'm just saying what I think is gold.
I can't wear that or I'll ruin my, nicely coiffed hair. Now, you might be surprised to learn that the production on this album is actually from Joey Moy. Yes, producer of Morgan Wallen and Florida Georgia Line and Nickelback. He's kind of the in-house Big Loud producer. Jake Worthington is signed to Big Loud, and he made this album, and it's kind of like quite a statement for Joey Moy to make this album. I mean, it's so damn country. But there is a one-noteness to this album that can take me out of it a little. It can feel almost boring that it's so country. I know my ear gravitates more to that sound compared to the radio, but I just wanted to hear some little switch-ups. Even just lyrically, some more contemporary references, because it's very classic, there's a tear in my beer type of country music. And you hear that on the sadder songs like State You Left Me In and She Ain't You.
I'm still in the state you left me in.
But then you've also got this really fun side to the album, like the Ernest collab, Pop Goes the Whiskey, as well as Ain't Got You to Hold, or Honky Tonk Crowd.
Good old boy, looking for the next new thing.
There's still a humor on this record, but maybe there's just something wrong with me right now, but much like I said with Kip, much like I said with Parker, and much like I'm about to say with Bailey, there's something that's a little too blocky about this album's vibe that makes me wonder if I'm gonna go back and revisit it all the time. And I don't know, maybe I'm just becoming too freaking ADD like everyone else in the world, because all these little blips of information are all over us, and like an album that doesn't have some kind of zingers to keep me engaged can feel boring, but I'm just trying to be honest here. Still, I really freaking like the album. I'm pumped that people are hearing it, liking Jake, and I hope more people find it. I would say the one standout to definitely check out is Single at the Same Time. I feel like it's like a countryer version almost of what John Party does. So if you like the John Party sound and the Midland sound, but you want to take one step further in a traditional direction, you might like Jake Worthington. Then we got Ian Munsick's White Buffalo.
Long live cowgirl.
Ian Munsick remains one of the most interesting people in all of country music. He's got such a unique brand. Truly Western, like he's from Wyoming and grew up kind of riding horses and singing with his brothers. Has this kind of yodel in his sound that sounds like a coyote howling at the moon. Definitely a higher voice, and loves to capture sort of everything from the nature of the mountains and the rivers and even Native American culture, like with the title track White Buffalo. That's like a symbol of good luck. But then he sometimes has these extremely progressive beats that are a little bit hip-hoppier. You'll get songs like Cowboy Killer, which has this like dance beat underneath it, and it kind of makes Ian Munsick a challenging person to categorize, and I've not ever quite known what to do with him. I recently got to see him live, and it fully clicked for me. Like, if you have any doubts about Ian Munsick, go see him live. One of the best performers I've ever seen. What a fun show. So country. And some of the things that give me pause on his recordings, you know, they're not as present on the live show, because I've always been really hard on how he vocally layers himself. I feel like it really takes me out of the Western like big sky vibes of his music, and it feels very processed and fakey compared to how country he is. And I'm glad to say that on White Buffalo, that does not happen as much. I feel like the production on this is definitely, is less indulgent in that way. It feels less kind of like trying to mishmash super modern production with the kind of mountain sound, and it just lets them work together a little better. That's not to say that's always the case, but for the most part, I'm very happy with the direction of the songs on White Buffalo. What's interesting is there are probably more songs on this album that I would skip than other albums in this video, but I think I would always choose to play the Ian Munsick record over it just because it's more fun, it's more dynamic, it's more weird. We've got some really crazy fun moments, some really sad moments, and to me, that's a really good time. Some of the faster ones on here are my very favorite tracks. I'm obsessed with a song called Barn Burner.
She broke my heart, then her barn burned down like one thing led to the other.
Which is a revenge song about a guy possibly burning down this girl's house that breaks his heart and cheated on him. He's like, look, I'm not saying I did it. I'm just saying she broke my heart and then her barn burned down. It's stupid, it's funny, and then there's this whole breakdown at the end where he's like,
I got me a pocket full of matches. I got me a broken.
kind of reminds me of the breakdown at the end almost of like how Boondocks does that by Little Big Town, where there's a whole like extra little song. It's so good and so fun. Neon Brightside feels straight out of a John Party album in a great way to me.
Keep on the neon bright side.
And then I love some of the little like vocal flicks and yodels on Bluegrass. Cow Shit in the Morning is one of the songs that I think has way too much production, but it's a pretty funny lyric.
I'd rather smell cow shit in the morning than put up with her.
Where he's like, I would literally rather be digging up cow shit in the morning than putting up with her bullshit. But then there's a lot of songs about being a husband and a father on here as well. Dig seems to be the one that the label is going to be pushing as a single, which I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it's less fun than he is, but some of the lyrics of like wanting to dig down into the essence of who someone is and see their skeletons and how he's not afraid to do that, that's beautiful. Little Man about, you know, his son, gorgeous song. I feel like you get a cross section of silly and serious Ian on something like Horses and Weed.
Horses and weed.
And although I find the Nashville sort of religiosity around weed slightly strange, it's an interesting, good song. But yeah, this album is campy, interesting, Western, modern, and very Ian. And so it's imperfect, but I'll take imperfect and intriguing any day of the week. Because who else on a major label in Nashville is putting out songs about rivers and arrowheads and Indian paintbrush and the western skies? Like, he's bringing something different to the table, and I need, like, the mainstream to understand that. Like, having seen him live now, he's like so ready to go. Just like, hello, you know, whatever deals you need to do at Warner Brothers to like, you know, pay off radio and like make him a big star, do that please. He's ready. I accept corrupt business behavior for the people I love. And then there's Bailey Zimmerman's debut album, Religiously.
Now I'm in this cold bright light, and this don't even feel like light.
I bet after all the other reviews I've said in this video, you can guess what I'm gonna say. Wow, this album can feel sort of one note, although all the songs individually are pretty good. And that's how I feel about this album. I actually was surprised how much I enjoyed it. Like all of Bailey's songs, I mean, I think I noticed this way back when I first listened to Fall in Love, and then when I listened to Rock in a Hard Place, I was like, you know, he's got an amazing and interesting tone. I'm not talking about some of the live videos where people are like, he can't sing. I'm talking about recorded. This is a great and interesting tone to listen to.
I've been down a few broken roads that I'm trying to mend.
I find it very expressive. There's a surprising amount of steel on here, and yet this album, more than any of the others I've talked about, does have that classic, what I have said is a very Joey Moyish kind of wall of sound. With a ton of thickness kind of behind the vocal as it just kind of hits hard, a lot of percussion as well. It's very in your face for my taste, although that seems to be what the public enjoys. They like that kind of big, obvious, like boom of a chorus. And that bears out in the album sales. This debuted, I think, at 46K in its opening week of equivalent album units, and that's great. I mean, the next highest person is Hardy. He started with 55,000, and then, you know, Bailey was ahead of the recent albums from, like, Carrie and Miranda, Maren Morris, Party, Ernest, so, like, Bailey's here, and he's a star. This album has a pretty strong rock influence on it. I've seen a lot of people compare it to Nickelback, and yeah, I agree. And songs like Warzone, for instance, which I think is a really good melody, definitely do remind me of a little bit of that kind of like butt rock, daughtry sound. My favorite songs in the album, perhaps unsurprisingly, are the ones with a bit lighter of a touch. You Don't Want That Smoke.
But you don't want that smoke, the kind that's in her past.
Chase Her, I enjoy. And then the final track of the album is way more kind of like country, even a touch beachy. It makes sense, like Ernest and Chandler Walters and some of those guys are writers on it. And it's called Is This Really Over?
Is this really over? 'Cause I need some closure.
But otherwise, these feel like pretty safe radio songs. In a way, this sort of reminds me a bit of Luke Combs' debut album, where some pretty broad songwriting, largely relatable to a lot of different people, but maybe not super personal feeling, like I think we're now getting on kind of Luke Combs' Getting Old era. So I want to see Bailey kind of go in that direction in the future, but as it stands, I don't think this is like unlistenable. Maybe just not my favorite. Probably my least favorite of these albums. Other stuff I've kind of been listening to lately, well, you can go look at my Spotify playlist, Grady Smith Favorite Country Music. That generally will show what I've been listening to lately if I am vibing with it. I like Evan Honer's album. Yeah, I think it's like his debut album or EP, especially that song, You'd Never Know. I feel like we got like a young Noah Kahn in Evan, and I just think he's a delightful person. And then there's an album called Hollier or Ollier. It's not Hollier. You can look at his Instagram. It's not that. But this is an album from a band that I saw here in Nashville. They actually played Whiskey Jam, and I was just blown away by them. The guy's from Louisiana. It's got way more of sort of like a gumbo-soaked Louisiana vibe on this. It's not dissimilar to some of the tones of Blackberry Smoke or Whiskey Myers, but man, this album's really cool, really different. I like the song Reckless Love and Saint Germain. Really need to listen to Warring Treaties album, Logan Halstead's album, probably Justin Moore's. I still need to listen to Nate Smith's Bear of an album, but haven't. And I haven't listened to Diplo's EP. So, you know, lots of blind spots, but hey, that's a bunch of albums. I just talked about 8 of them in this video. So go check out one of those if you're looking for something to listen to. And that's all. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't been here, and I'll be back with more stuff soon. Sorry there's been a delay. If you go to my Instagram, I kind of talked about it, but I got freaking held at gunpoint and robbed recently. So, you know, that was a real wrench in my life. And I had to get, you know, new phone, the new keys, and get, you know, it's a mess. I don't recommend it, okay? But I'm okay. I'm alive. I'm happy to be here talking about country music with all of you. So, yes, but there's more content coming soon. Okay, later, y'all.